So I'm debating with another feminist on this app on a different page. Follow my other page, right? If you want to see it. And it started because he reposted a woman who used to be who was a sex worker, ex-sex worker, I guess, who made this post going on a rant about men basically and women, saying how they missed the ball with the divestment movement, and like basically the undertone was that women are so dumb that they didn't even capitalize on the perfect opportunity of the divestment movement because they were so short-sighted that all they could do was say, "I told you so," or "Gotcha," instead of actually capitalizing on the divestment movement, right? As far as TikTok is concerned. Now, this was her point, but in making that point, she was, of course, had to take some shots at men, talk about how violent we are towards women, and how certain men have told her to her face how, that they just don't care about women and all of these demeaning things. And, and he reposted it. So I commented, well, as a sex worker, you're probably going to hear some bad things from men because you're dealing with the worst of them. You know what I'm saying? You're dealing with men who about that life. He said, so he goes back, he kind of like, calling me out. Oh, Maya Angelou was a sex worker and all this, like, like, I'm not even focused. That's not the point, bro. Maya Angelou is not degrading black men and calling black women and men the problem. You know what I mean? Because she was using language like incels and hoteps and cell swords and what's the pick me's and all this. And I'm like, that's what I focused on. I don't know about the timeline on TikTok because I wasn't on here, right? So throughout the, long story short, he ended up saying, oh yeah, she said one thing. She said, well, I just, like, men, y'all not doing nothing. Y'all always talking about leading and doing this, and y'all can't lead nothing. I just drove through the hood, and y'all can't even get the trash off the street. Y'all can't lead nothing, right? Now, as funny as that is hypocritical for you to talk down on somebody, on a group of people, especially given your background, right? The people that kind of put you in a position, because she's a successful business owner. She's sitting in her business right now. Yeah, she sold the hottest commodity on this planet. You know what I'm saying? To get there, and she's shitting on the people who financed it. But that's here nor there, right? And my whole point was, how do we degrade people, a whole group of people, and protect the honor of a dishonorable person over the group of people who are going to have they're going to have a combination of people. It's going to have honorable, it's going to have dishonorable people, but we don't know because we don't know anybody in this group. We just make it an assumption, right? Goes on to talk about how, incel is not derogatory, hotep is not derogatory, pick me is not derogatory. I'm like, all right, I'm not arguing that because that's just BS. And number two, that's not even a point. Like, stop trying to derail. You understand quite well what I'm saying, right? None of that got nothing to do with what I wanted to say, so I'm gonna speed that part up. But my point is, right? And I said, yeah, she's likely talking about us because she doesn't know us. So it's very likely that the group of men that she categorizing on this app, you fall into it, right? Just like I fall into it, even though we aren't none of these things. So he goes on to say, yeah, well, I ain't no incel, and I ain't no pick me, and I ain't no this, I don't live in the hood, right? So that's what I want to talk about, right? This whole mentality of that doesn't affect me, therefore I can ignore it, or number one, and I'm using no because they both equally important. So and number one, prop up a message just because this thing doesn't really affect you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you advocating for something that you know is damaging to a certain group of people, but because you're not in that group of people, you're fine with promoting that message, right? And what just reminded me of this is I think she's running for Senator, Valentina Gomez, just used America's oldest and strongest form of ploys to gain popularity, which is to use white supremacy as a tool against black people, making this anti-black video in order to get votes in, I believe Missouri or something like that, right? When we allow these, when we promote these messages just because we are not in that group, it hurts all of us as a whole. Because yeah, you don't live in the hood, and yeah, you may not be a black conservative or a black, a liberal or whatever. But if you promote a message that attacks all of those people based on the fact that you're not a part of that group, it messes up the black people in general, or whatever group that is in general, because as both sides are fighting, we have no choice but to watch from the outside, and all of these subliminal messages begin to consume our lives. So as red fights blue and blue fights red, the only people that truly lose are us, because we're usually the butt of the joke. And that's why identity politics is so dangerous, and that's why it's so dangerous to have this us versus them mentality, even when it comes to things that may not affect us. So, I went on to say, like, we can't really advocate for women at the expense of men, and we can't advocate for men at the expense of, just like we can't advocate for men against at the expense of women. So that's why like fighting for the family, the black family in general, need to be at the top of activism in general, because that's the most important. That's the most important tool for our liberation. You know what I'm saying?